Maria Alvarez had spent most of her adult life quietly working in the grand homes of the rich. She moved through mansions like a whisper, careful not to disturb, barely acknowledged, and always professional. At 53, she had seen every kind of extravagance, from marble bathtubs to chandeliers larger than her entire apartment. But nothing had ever moved her the way the dress did. On that particular afternoon, while dusting the upstairs bedroom of the Kensington estate, she spotted it. A wedding dress hanging from the closet door. It wasn't just any dress, it was the kind of gown little girls dreamed of. Ivory silk flowed like water. Delicate lace traced along the sleeves, and pearl beads sparkled in the light that filtered through the window. It was breathtaking. And for reasons she couldn't explain, Maria couldn't take her eyes off it. She looked around. No one was home. Her heart pounding, she stepped closer, her fingers aching to feel the softness of the fabric. She hadn't worn a wedding dress herself. Her fiancé Andres had died in a car crash just a week before their wedding day over 30 years ago. Since then, she'd never touched a gown, never dared to dream again. But this one had called to her. Just one touch, she told herself. Just to remember. Her fingers brushed the silk. It was smooth, like memory itself. In that second, Maria was no longer a housekeeper. She was a young bride again, full of hope and joy. But the moment shattered as a sharp voice cut through the silence. "What do you think you're doing?" Maria spun around, startled. It was Lillian Kensington, the bride, to be, home earlier than expected, phone already raised to snap a photo. "You're fired," she said coldly, without waiting for an explanation. Maria's chest tightened as if she couldn't breathe. She tried to speak, but Lillian turned away. Within the hour, Maria was escorted out of the house. Her contract terminated, her dignity bruised. The same hands that had once held a lover's promise now trembled around her final paycheck. She walked home with tears streaming down her cheeks, not just from shame, but from the ache of old memories stirred by a dress that was never meant for her. That night, Lillian Kensington tossed and turned in her bed, unable to escape the image of the housekeeper's face. Not angry or embarrassed, but full of quiet sorrow. She had been so quick to judge, so swift to act, and now that the adrenaline had worn off, all that remained was guilt. The wedding should have been the happiest time of her life, yet her thoughts were haunted by the look in Maria's eyes. A look that spoke of pain far deeper than the harmless act of touching a dress. Lillian had grown up in a world where things were black and whitey, rules were followed, lines not crossed. But there had been no threat in Maria's gesture, no malice, just something human, vulnerable, even beautiful. She sat up in bed and pulled out her phone, opening the photo she'd taken. Maria's face was turned toward the dress, her hand resting gently on the silk. She didn't look like someone trying to steal or overstep. She looked like someone remembering. For the first time, Lillian wondered who Maria was beyond her role in the Kensington home. What had that dress meant to her? Had she once dreamt of walking down the aisle herself? The thought gnawed at her. Lillian couldn't shake the sense that she had wronged someone who didn't deserve it. When Brandon, her fiancé, rolled over and asked what was bothering her, she whispered the truth. "I fired the housekeeper today for touching my dress, but now I think she wasn't doing anything wrong." He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, "Then go find her, before it's too late." By morning, Lillian made up her mind. She canceled her dress fitting and drove across town, asking anyone who might know where Maria lived. The florist who'd once delivered roses to the Kensingtons gave her a lead. A modest apartment complex on the edge of the city. Her heels clicked across cracked pavement as she approached the door with a mix of fear and humility. It felt strange, this reversal of roles, the bride seeking out the housekeeper. She knocked gently and waited. Moments passed. Then the door opened slowly, revealing a tired face, eyes red from tears. Maria stood there, stunned. "I'm so sorry," Lillian said quietly. "I need to talk to you." Maria stared at Lillian, frozen in the doorway, unsure if she was still dreaming or if guilt had truly led the young bride all the way to her modest apartment. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Maria, still wary from the emotional blow of the previous day, stepped aside and silently allowed Lillian inside. The apartment was small but spotless, filled with signs of a quiet life. Framed photos of her parents, a candle flickering on a shelf, and an unfinished sewing project draped over the couch. Lillian sat gently on the edge of the armchair, her designer coat clashing with the simplicity of the space, and looked up at Maria with genuine remorse. "I came to apologize," she began. "I reacted without understanding, and I've regretted it ever since." Maria didn't respond immediately. She moved to the kitchen, poured 2 cups of tea, and handed one to Lillian. Then she sat across from her, her eyes still puffy but calmer now. "I wasn't trying to steal anything," Maria said softly. "That dress, it reminded me of a life I almost had. I was engaged once. His name was Alvarez. He died in an accident a week before our wedding. I never wore my dress. I never even touched it again. I buried it in the back of my closet and tried to forget. But when I saw yours, it felt like touching a dream I had buried with him." Lillian's throat tightened, shame washing over her. She hadn't just fired a housekeeper. She'd dismissed a human being with a story and a heart that still grieved. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't even think to ask." Maria shook her head gently. "Most people don't." After a long pause, Lillian reached into her bag and pulled out a crisp white envelope. "This isn't money," she said quickly. "It's an invitation. I want you to come to my wedding, not as staff, as my guest, as someone who reminded me to look past the surface." Maria blinked, taken aback. "You want me there?" "Yes," Lillian said firmly. "Front row if you'll come." Maria stared at the envelope, her fingers trembling. For the first time in years, her heart stirred with warmth, not grief. Maybe some dreams didn't die. Maybe they just waited to be seen again. The day of the wedding arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows of St. Augustine's Chapel. Guests filled the pews in elegant attire, chatter echoing softly through the air as music played in the background. But amid the sea of silk dresses and tailored suits, one figure stood out, not because she was the wealthiest or most fashionable, but because she radiated quiet grace. Maria Alvarez sat near the front, her posture humble, dressed in a powder blue gown that Lillian had sent her with a handwritten note. "You belong here." Maria had debated for hours whether to attend. Part of her still felt the weight of shame from being fired. But deeper than that was something more powerful. Healing. Lillian's apology had been sincere, and the invitation felt like a bridge between 2 worlds. So she came. And as she sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, the music changed, signaling the bride's entrance. Lillian walked down the aisle, radiant in the very dress that had once reopened Maria's deepest wound. But today, that wound felt different, less like a scar and more like a story finally acknowledged. As Lillian passed Maria, she paused ever so slightly, their eyes meeting in a shared moment of understanding. No words were spoken, but a smile passed between them, soft and full of gratitude. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with heartfelt vows and tears of joy. But it was during the reception that something truly unexpected happened. As the crowd gathered in the grand ballroom, Lillian took the microphone and tapped it gently. "Before we begin the festivities," she said, "I'd like to introduce someone very special." All eyes turned as Lillian gestured toward Maria. "This woman taught me something I'll carry for the rest of my life, that behind every uniform, every title, every silence, there's a story we don't see." Maria reminded me to look deeper, to listen with my heart. There was a hush, followed by applause, soft at first, then rising. Maria blinked back tears, not from sadness, but from being seen, truly seen. In a world that often overlooks the quiet souls who keep it running, one woman's story had been honored. And for Maria, that seat at the front wasn't just a place of honor. It was a return to hope.